Sil kept making mean comments about my husband because he chose to stay home and take care of our family instead of working. I got really upset and told everyone at her wedding dinner how Jason had supported their whole family during tough times. Let me give you some background. I'm 28 years old and my husband Jason is 29. We met 6 years ago and got married 3 years ago. We have a 1-year-old daughter together. I met Jason through my brother, who is friends with him because of their jobs. Jason used to be a police officer, and my brother owns a pizza place where Jason used to hang out. One year, my brother brought Jason home for Thanksgiving, and that's when we met. After dating for 3 years, Jason proposed, and we got married. I had met most of Jason's family before we got married, and they were usually nice to me, except for my sister-in-law Janice, who is 27. Even though Jason assured me that Janice would warm up to me eventually, she never did. She never openly showed her dislike for me in front of others. Instead, she would make subtle insults and backhanded compliments, passing them off as jokes. At first, it really bothered me, but after a while, I got used to it. I got used to ignoring Sil's mean comments because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. She never said anything rude when my husband Jason was around, probably because she didn't want to upset him. Jason knew about the tension between his sister and me and made sure I wasn't alone with her during family visits. I didn't want Jason to cut off his family because of Sil's behavior, so we just pretended everything was fine. We both tried to ignore Sil's comments, even though it wasn't easy. We didn't really have any other choice. Looking back, I wish I had spoken up instead of staying silent. I was worried about causing trouble or being seen as overly sensitive. But I couldn't stay quiet any longer, especially after what happened recently. Jason used to be a police officer, but he quit his job to be a stay-at-home dad a few months ago. I'm a working mom with a demanding job as a trauma surgeon. My husband and I were struggling to balance our careers with raising our daughter. Both of us had demanding jobs and couldn't spend much time at home. We relied on daycare and our parents to take care of our daughter when needed, but it didn't feel like enough. We felt like we were missing out on important time with her, and we worried she wouldn't have us around much as she grew up. About a year ago, my husband Jason and I had a serious talk about this. He decided to quit his job as a police officer so he could spend more time at home with our daughter. I didn't push him to make that choice, but he felt it was the right thing to do since I earned more money, and he believed it was fair for our daughter to have one of us around most of the time. I asked Jason countless times if he was sure about quitting his job to become a full-time dad. It was a big decision, and I wanted to be sure he wouldn't regret it or feel resentful toward me. But he reassured me that he was happy to take on this role. Even though he loved being a cop, he seemed genuinely content spending his days taking care of our daughter and managing the household. We talked about it recently, and he admitted that it was a bit challenging at first to adjust to being a stay-at-home dad after working for so long. But over time, he found it easier, especially because he could spend quality time with our daughter. He's really happy with how things have turned out. He used to dream of being a cop, but now his biggest dream is being a father, and I think that's pretty amazing. However, Jason's family doesn't see any beauty in our situation. I probably should have expected this, considering they're pretty traditional. While they allow women to work, there's a catch. They don't allow men to work at home. None of the men in Jason's family do household chores because they think it's beneath them. So the women end up doing both their jobs and the household work, or they're pressured to quit their jobs altogether, like my mother-in-law did. What's even crazier is that they don't see anything wrong with this setup. They think it's perfectly fine. Jason and I have talked about this, and we both agree it's a backward way of thinking. But we've never brought it up with his family because they just come up with excuses to justify their beliefs, and we didn't want to get into arguments with them. If they're happy living their lives that way, who are we to judge them? Thankfully, we found a different path for ourselves. Jason and I have always divided our responsibilities equally, and sometimes he even does more household chores if I have to work late. Now, with him staying at home full-time, he's taking care of everything at home while I focus on my job to support us. We believe that as long as we're all happy and healthy, and there's food on the table, it doesn't matter who does what. However, his parents and sister strongly disagree with this. They're upset with Jason for quitting his job and staying home with our daughter. They think it makes him less of a man or something, and they've been arguing with him about it for months. I tried to step in at first, but his parents made it clear that my involvement would only make things worse. Jason didn't want me to defend him either because he didn't want to drag me into the conflict. So I decided to stay out of their way. It took them a while, but eventually they accepted our new arrangement and stopped bringing it up. It probably helped that they had other things to focus on, like Janice getting engaged. Her boyfriend, Harry, proposed after they'd been together for 2 years. Everyone was so caught up in the excitement of the engagement that they pretty much forgot about Jason's situation for a while. We were grateful for the distraction because it meant we didn't have to deal with any arguments from his family about Jason staying home. It seemed like everything had blown over, and we wouldn't have to hear about traditional gender roles again. But then, at Janice's rehearsal dinner yesterday, the topic came up again. So we had a bit of a crisis. Janice's wedding was just a day away, and we needed to figure out how to handle the situation quickly. We needed help urgently, so we posted about it hoping for a fast response. During dinner at the rehearsal dinner, Jason and I were sitting across from Janice and her fiancé Harry. Their parents and a few other family members were there too, and we were all chatting happily. Everything seemed fine, and I was relieved that we were getting along well, especially after the tension from Jason quitting his job. But then Janice suddenly changed the subject and asked me about my work. I felt really uncomfortable, but I had to answer Janice's question about my work because it seemed innocent enough. I just said everything was going well and hoped she'd leave it at that. But then she turned to Jason and made a joke about how he's now living a life of leisure since he's not working and relying on my income. She didn't stop there. She kept making jokes about how he's not in charge anymore and cracked some other mean jokes about him. Jason tried to brush it off and smile, but it was clear he was hurt. I couldn't take it anymore. It was like all the frustration from dealing with Janice and her family's outdated views just boiled over. So I decided to bring up something that nobody wanted to hear. I couldn't hold back anymore, so I told Janice that she could joke all she wanted, but Jason was still a better person than anyone in their family. I pointed out how audacious it was for her to make fun of Jason, considering that without him, she wouldn't have been able to go to college or even meet Harry. Jason had been helping his parents financially since he was 18. It was a dark time for their family when Jason's father lost his job while Jason was still in high school. Janice was too sheltered to notice the struggles in her own family, and her parents and Jason made sure to shield her from it. They never said no to her, even when they were struggling themselves. Jason had to work 2 jobs to support them while his father searched for work. Thankfully, they only had to endure this hardship for about a year, thanks to Jason's support and some savings. Janice never knew about any of this until I brought it up at the rehearsal dinner. She was shocked, and so was everyone else, because the secret had been kept for almost a decade. Nobody was supposed to talk about it because they didn't want Janice to find out. But after all those years, I finally brought it up, and now she knew exactly how much she owed to her brother. She had no right to make fun of him or put him down. Everyone else might have kept quiet to protect her, especially Jason, but I couldn't stand by silently. After I spoke up, there was just silence at the table. After a moment, Jason and I left, and we walked back to our hotel room without saying a word. Even when we got there, we didn't discuss what had happened at dinner. I knew it would become a big deal, and so did Jason. But his silence told me he didn't think I did anything wrong, so there was no need to talk about it further. The next morning, when I woke up to the sound of knocking on our door, and it was Jason's parents. They wanted to talk to me right away. After they came in and we all sat down, they got straight to the point. They told me that the family wanted me to apologize to Janice. They felt that what I said at dinner was something they had kept from her for a long time, and it wasn't right for me to bring it up. They said it wasn't my place to say those things to her, and it had ruined the atmosphere of the evening. They also mentioned that Janice was just joking around with Jason like siblings often do, And now she was upset and couldn't stop crying, and it was all because of me. I realized I had no justification for getting so defensive and revealing such a big secret, knowing the impact it would have on their family. Janice was feeling incredibly guilty and kept apologizing to her parents, realizing she had been a burden on them without even realizing it. Her parents explained that she was having a total breakdown, which is exactly why they never wanted her to know the truth about their past struggles. They believed she was emotionally fragile and wouldn't be able to handle it, and her reactions seemed to confirm their fears. Now they want me to apologize to Janice and the rest of the family for my outbursts and tell her I didn't mean what I said. I have until the end of the day to decide, but they want me to resolve things before her wedding tomorrow. There's a one-day gap between the rehearsal dinner and the wedding, so she has time for her friends to arrive. It's fortunate that I have until the evening to decide what to do. Jason believes I shouldn't apologize because I was just standing up for him, and Janice has always been rude to me, so it's time I stood my ground. I've been leaning towards the same viewpoint. However, with Janice's wedding coming up tomorrow, I don't feel good about potentially causing her to have a breakdown right before her big day. Most of her family members think I owe her an apology, but I know their opinion is biased. Even Jason's opinion might be influenced by our situation. So I've turned to Reddit for a neutral perspective. I brought up how my husband helped his family in the past because Janice kept making fun of him for being a stay-at-home father. Update 1. It's evening now, and I've read the comments. I've decided I don't need to apologize for anything. Jason and I are packing up to leave because it would be awkward if I don't apologize and still go to Janice's wedding tomorrow. We're going to tell his parents we're leaving, because it wouldn't be right to just disappear without saying anything. Jason and I discussed this earlier, and he thinks it's the right thing to do. Janice has always been rude and insensitive, and it's time she faces the consequences. Jason's family has been difficult to deal with since he quit his job. He expected them to support him, but they haven't. They make him feel bad for wanting to spend time with his daughter. We knew that they had old-fashioned views about work and household chores, but we hoped they would change. Since they haven't, it's their fault if we stop talking to them. We're happy with our lives, and if they can't be happy for us, we don't want them around. They've been negative and critical of us for months, and we don't need that kind of energy in our lives. So we stood up for ourselves because we had enough. Jason's parents didn't like it and called us selfish, saying we needed to consider how our actions would affect Janice's wedding. They thought our absence would cause a scene and take the attention away from her. Janice herself showed up after hearing the argument. She said it was okay if we didn't come to the wedding, and actually preferred it that way. But then she accused me of being selfish and trying to ruin her wedding. We ended up arguing, which wasn't great, but it gave us a reason to leave without more drama. They didn't try to stop us, which was a relief. We just want to focus on our own lives now. We might forgive them if they apologize, but that seems unlikely. Right now, we're just happy to be home with our daughter. Jason's playing with her while I write this. Our family feels perfect, no matter what anyone else thinks. Hey everyone, this update is a day after the wedding, which we didn't attend. Apparently, there was a lot of talk about us, mainly from Janice herself. It's funny because her parents were worried our absence would make the day about us. But Janice made it about us anyway. She told distant relatives about our argument, making a big deal out of it. Some people are reaching out to Jason for details, wanting to be part of the drama. We're staying out of it and being vague in our responses. We don't want to stoop to their level and get into more fights. Janice loves drama, and we don't want to give her more. We're ignoring everyone and trying to take the high road, even though they talked about us behind our backs. We just want to move on and leave the drama behind.